This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Not getting off the field on third down, giving up explosive plays. Score doesn't indicate anything like that.
We had a great season, but 5 words. Good is not good enough. We didn't finish the way we wanted to finish. We didn't do the things we needed to do to execute and be successful in this game, and that's all it is.
The one thing that had not happened during Nick Saban's tenure in T-Town was a blowout loss, and it happened in stunning fashion tonight under the brightest lights against a team that, as I spoke with Reese Davis on Sunday, is in every respect during this last 4-year window Alabama's equal. Tonight, they were not Alabama's equal. They were far superior. The Ford postgame now. And Reese Davis, who I was just mentioning, kind enough to join us again. And Reese, in the tonnage of words and the hours leading up to this game, I don't imagine 28-point Alabama loss was something that was discussed. So the final is a bit of a shock. What led to that, in your estimation? What was the most surprising thing that led to the final score in California?
Scott, I think it's that Clemson was the more physical team for the course of the night. Now, Nick Saban, you just heard him say that the stats were fairly even, but everything seemed harder for Alabama than it was for Clemson. And, you know, Clemson made the big explosive plays, and I think the fact that Alabama really couldn't sustain things on offense and couldn't finish drives, that was the biggest and most surprising thing to me, other than the uncharacteristic poor throws by Tagovailoa that one turned into a pick six and the other stopped a scoring opportunity.
I'm with you in that even after the outcome felt largely decided, Christian Wilkins and that front from Clemson, they fought with ferocity over every yard like it was personal. You asked Wilkins if there'd been a changing of the guard during his tenure, and he really dodged the question. He said, that's for us to decide. So I'd ask you, right now, I mean, have we seen something of a changing of the guard?
Yes, that's what tonight felt like to me, a changing of the guard. Now, don't misunderstand this. A lot of people in our business, Scott, every time Alabama loses, they run out to be the first guy to say that the dynasty's dead. I'm not saying that.
Understood.
But I am saying that things just turned upside down tonight. And instead of being the team that is pursuing Alabama as the top spot, Clemson is now the program that's sitting at the top. That type of win, it's different than winning a game in the final seconds, a back-and-forth game. That can happen to anybody. When you come in and dominate a championship game against a quality opponent like that, you get the spoils. And to me, Clemson tonight became the premier program at the moment in college football.
And I agree with everything you just said, which isn't surprising because you and I are often on the same page. And I would just add, because there's a 19-year-old who's their quarterback who, by rule, has to stay in college for 2 more seasons. And the skill position guys are all sophomores and freshmen. Now, I understand that they lose some guys up front. But, I mean, we're talking about a true freshman in Lawrence that you just don't do that to Nick Saban. What'd you make of the freshman's performance, the quarterback?
Well, he's as good a quarterback prospect as I've seen in the whole time I've been working in college football, Scott. And I've been covering it for ESPN for more than 20 years and longer than that back in my local days. I've never seen a quarterback prospect better than Trevor Lawrence. I haven't seen a guy play better on a big stage than Trevor Lawrence did tonight after he settled down. He's got every tool you can imagine. He's a tremendous athlete, great leader. The arm is just off the charts. You know, the interesting thing about it is that virtually everyone in the skill position category for Alabama's back next year. They might be 1 year older than those Clemson freshmen, but we might see this again. But Alabama's got a lot of work to do if they're going to elevate and get to this level. But sometimes, you know what they say, a good butt whipping can be soul cleansing, and Alabama certainly got one of those tonight.
Yeah, well, their souls are spotless after this one, man. After what happened to them, they are clean.
One big thing.
When Trevor Lawrence was a high school quarterback, Mike Farrell of Rivals.com told me he was the best prospect he had ever seen at the position. Mike and I have been friendly for years, and while he's not a guy prone to exaggeration, I'm always hesitant to blindly just buy it. I mean, let's see what he looks like when he makes the jump to the collegiate level, right? Okay, I think we got it. I think we're good here. Now we've transitioned from Lawrence being considered a five-star Canton high school prospect to, if he could enter the NFL draft this spring, he'd likely be the #1 player taken right now. After making just his 10th start Monday night, that seems to be the consensus about this rare talent. And unlike the NBA draft, where the very best prospects are wanted, the a player can't enter the draft until his graduating high school class has been out of school for 3 years. Makes sense. NFL is a league of men, adults. It's not an easy transition to the NBA as a teenager either, but it is easier. Very, very few collegiate players will be ready to make the leap to the NFL after only one season. Lawrence would be coveted if he could, but he has to stick around for 2 more seasons by rule. Add to that, Clemson's top skill position players are sophomores and freshmen as well. Their O-line's going to lose key experience, but they'll be returning a guy the NFL would take first now to run the show. As I said on the show Sunday about Clemson, win or lose Monday night, they had already won. They had already established themselves as a legitimate rival to Alabama, a real peer. Now they not just beat them, they obliterated them in this second victory head-to-head. And the forecast in Clemson calls for 2 more years of sunshine. From the winner to the losing side, Nick Saban has been at Alabama since 2007. This result was obviously uncommon. Since he's been at Bama, the Tide allows 14.1 points per game. 44, the second most that they've allowed. Alabama was 3rd best in FBS on defense in terms of third downs at 32%. You heard Saban point out time and time again we couldn't get off the field. They could not. Clemson converted 10 of 15, that's 66.7% on third down. That's the best percentage against the Saban team ever at Bama. Bama's defense under Saban allowed only 4.36 yards per play. Best in the nation over that time. Clemson, 7.65 yards per clip, the second best single game rate against Saban and the Tide. And it all boils down in the end to the scoreboard. That scoring margin in the first 166 games under Saban, the Tide were plus 22 points per game, best in the nation. This, not just his worst loss, but by twice as bad as he's ever been beaten. 28. We welcome in Tom Rinaldi. And Tom, you know Nick and this program so very well. And as I said, kind of jokingly with Reese and with Chris and Kirk earlier, this is just not something any of us planned for.
When that standard isn't met, the season is seen as a failure. There's no other way to state it. It's seen as unfulfilling, something that did not ultimately accomplish what its prime goal was, to win the national title. But to give some context to it, just consider, this is the 8th opportunity Nick Saban's had to win the national championship. 8. He's won 6 of them. So when you consider that, perhaps that frames this entire season and more. What can defeat teach that victory cannot? Nothing you want to learn. Not when you're them.
It's intercepted! A.J. Terrell with a pick 6!
Not when you're him. For Alabama, every loss, no matter its gap or shape or way, is seismic. Never a scoreline, always a headline. That's the price of the expectation they've created, the standard they've offered, the dynasty they've built.
Did you ever think you'd see a Nick Saban team beaten down like this in a championship game?
And when it doesn't end with the trophy lifted and the confetti falling and the title count growing, it's a season unfulfilled. What could have been with a win? The precious potential to be maybe Saban's best team ever. Maybe the best Alabama team ever. The first team to go wire to wire as AP #1 and to go undefeated across a 15-game season. The chance for Saban to win a 7th national title, to break his tie with Bear Bryant, to win more titles than any coach in the modern era. It wasn't to be. Saban has often said it, success is not a continuum. Complacency is the adversary, contentment the constant enemy. Truth is, the Tide had a spectacular season and a bad night. Both are possible. Each is true. As is this. All tides ebb, so that once more they may rise.